future. There are no people in the future. No people at all. There are no people in the future. Where did all my people go? There are no people in the future. Let me try my people call. Where are all my people? Where are all my people? I guess I'll fly away now.
Hey everybody, welcome. It is Friday, September 23rd. Welcome to Raging Chicken's Friday Politics Roundup. Yes, this is Kevin Mahoney, creator and founder of Raging Chicken. Each week we break down the good, the bad, and the ugly in state and national politics. You can help support this show by becoming a patron for as little as $5 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/rcpress and become a patron today. You can also help out the show by getting on over to our YouTube channel if you're not there already. Smash that subscribe button, like the stream for this show, and hit that notification bell so you know every time that we go live. And share the show. Get it out there on Twitter, right? That's phenomenal. You can also head over wherever you get your podcast. If you listen to this as a podcast, make sure you're leaving us that 5-star review. Put a couple comments in there. The more that you're able to kind of leave those comments, give us those reviews on, Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, on Spotify. That helps other people find the show, right? The more you subscribe to our YouTube channel, the more people find the show. And thank you for all the recent subscriptions to our YouTube channel. The numbers just keep on going up. It's absolutely fantastic, and that's all because of you. I want to remind you also that we cannot, especially in this banned books week that we're in, we cannot let Paul Martino and his oligarch friends buy our schools and push extremist politics in our community. Raging Chicken has teamed up with Levelfield to launch a truly community-rooted pact to invest in organizing, supporting local and statewide progressive candidates, and unmasking the toxic organizations injecting our communities with right-wing extremism. We're putting small dollar donations to work to beat back the power of big money. You can get more information and drop your donation at ragingchicken.levelfield.net. Oof. And on today's show, well, a new long-form article in the New York Times by Pulitzer Prize winning journalist David Leonhardt takes a deep dive into what he's calling the twin threats to American democracy today. First, quote, a growing movement inside one of the country's two major parties, the Republican Party, to refuse to accept defeat in an election. And second, the power to set government policy is becoming increasingly disconnected from public opinion. Nice to see that you got Pulitzer Prize-winning journalists kind of on the same page as us now. That's really good. No, but really, it's a great report. We'll talk a little bit about that today. And last weekend saw the weirdest and perhaps most troubling Trump rally to date. I don't know if you saw this, but holy moly. Closing out his Youngstown, Ohio rally, Trump got dark about the decline of America and creepy QAnon-themed music played over the speakers. Like, it literally was based upon this QAnon theme called, well, they used the abbreviation, but where we go one, we go all, right? That was the name of the piece, but the WWG, well, all the abbreviation of that crazy thing. Anyways, so as he spoke, people in the audience began raising their arms and pointing a single finger in the air. It felt like this combination of like Nazi salute mixed with religious signs of devotion. You ever see those religious folks that kind of get on, they put their hands in the air, put their heads down like this, and put their, hands up like, praise God kind of thing. Well, but instead of the praise God hand going up like that, right, it was just a single finger pointing forward, right? And it's just strange. Even journalists who were have been covering Trump and right-wing extremists for quite some time, they were baffled. They're like, what the hell is this thing? Right? It just goes to show you that there are these streams of right-wing media and culture that are really dark to the public at this point. Anyways, new internal documents show that big oil companies openly admit to gaslighting the public about their commitment to going green. Documents also show that some company officials wished climate activists would get infested with bedbugs. Bedbugs. That's how petty these freaking people are. Anyways, a little closer to home, yes, it's Banned Books Week, and public libraries across the Commonwealth and the country are shining bright lights on censorship and attempts by right-wing zealots to remove books from our schools. Bucks County has, of course, been front and center in the book banning agenda, and this year alone has seen 681 attempts to ban or restrict library sources, according to the American Library Association. That is on par with basically breaking the record of last year, which saw the most book banning attempts at any time recently, which was, let's see, we get the numbers here, 729 attempts last year. But we still got a few months left. We can break it. We could do it. Crazy. As ALA President Lesa Kanai Opua Pelago Lozado, I'm very sorry, I'm butchering the name, I'm sorry. As she put it, quote, the unprecedented number of challenges we're seeing this year reflects coordinated national efforts to silence marginalized or historically unrepresented voices and deprive all of us, young people in particular, of the chance to explore the world beyond the confines of personal experience. Well freaking said. There's a reason why librarians are front and center and leading the charge here. And on Saturday, September 24th, that is tomorrow, if you're listening to this live on Friday the 23rd, there is going to be the first annual Banned Books Parade in Doylestown. Yep, from 4 to 6 p.m. at State and Main Streets. Participants will just dress up in cardboard boxes, kind of like made to look like books, right? Book costumes, and bring these banned books to life. You can join in the fun and bring your freedom to read signs with you, right? And speaking of the book banning craze here in Bucks County, the educational website DocuSeek was blocked by the Central Bucks School District after a concerned parent, if you listen out to Coop Live on Monday, there you go, Vanna De Armand complained at a recent school board meeting that some of the materials available on the site made references to sexually explicit themes and were discriminating against Christians. My pearls. I think she's like a health coach or something too as well. It's like there's this weird mix. I don't know if people have seen this, right? There's this overlap that I've been reading some more about with the kind of like personal fitness community and nutritionist community and like these QAnon right-wing religious extremist stuff. It's just really, if I were to put my academic hat on, I'd say it's a really interesting mix, but I'm like really troubling and concerning mix, ask me. Anyways, abortion is proving to be a key issue in PA's first congressional district this coming election. Yeah, and Brian Fitzpatrick seems to believe that avoiding talking to the media and his constituents is probably his best strategy. It's like it's like this guy's unbelievable. Right, a recent WFMZ 69 news story was covering the issue, and it featured Ashley Ehas, right, speaking out about abortion rights and some of the concerns about Fitzpatrick's votes, right, and his anti-abortion votes. But as the reporter put it, and this is like TV news, right, as the reporter put it, quote, 69 News wanted to talk more to Fitzpatrick about his views, but several attempts to reach his campaign went unanswered. Duck and cover, Fitzy, duck and cover. On today's last call, we got a couple big things happening in space news this week. First, later on today, NASA is holding a press briefing to discuss the status of the Artemis One mission to the moon, following 2 failed launches in August and I think early September. They had some problems with the hydrogen fueling stuff and some of these sealant leaks, but apparently they got those fixed. They just had a test launch or a test fueling thing of it this week, and everything seems to be holding. Artemis 1 may now launch as soon as September 27th, which is later this week, but that's the earliest it could possibly launch is on the 27th, so my guess would probably not be there. That's when the next launch window opens. But on Monday, this is pretty cool, if you ask me. NASA will be streaming live its asteroid smashing DART mission on Monday. There's going to be a link in the show notes where you can go check out information on where to go for that. But if you go to NASA's website, they're going to do it right on their NASA's website. They're going to have NASA TV. They're going to be streaming that too as well. What the DART mission is God, I should be able to tell you like immediately what that stands for, shouldn't I? You'd think I would prepare enough to tell you what DART means, right? It's the Double Asteroid Redirection Test. Okay, and so basically, I don't know if you've noticed this, but there's been these increase of stories that emerge in the media about the number of asteroids that come in close to our planet and all this kind of stuff. And by close, it's not like, oh, it grazed our atmosphere and took out satellites. Not like that. But astronomically speaking, it's pretty close. And they're starting to think about, okay, what if we take seriously this fact that an asteroid could actually hit this, hit the planet and cause, catastrophic events. So how do you actually defend against this? Is it possible to divert an asteroid and all this stuff? So the DART mission is sending up to this asteroid. There's this kind of like larger asteroid that's in an orbit that kind of comes around, and then there's a smaller asteroid that's kind of orbiting that other asteroid, right? So it's kind of like a moon asteroid kind of thing. And so the DART mission is sending this basically like, a space launch battering ram that is going to go and smash into that smaller asteroid to see if it can divert its path, right? So that's just wild in the first part. The second thing is they're actually going to have a camera that is streaming it live as this thing approaches this asteroid, which we've never seen, which will approach this asteroid and then slam into that. So maybe it's just me, but that seems freaking cool. Just to watch that they're actually doing this stuff. So it's crazy. And also a little bit of quasi-space news. The cartoon The Jetsons premiered on this date in 1962. Yep. The Jetsons. Meet George Jetson. I grew up kind of watching that. I guess I was watching reruns. I didn't realize it was premiered as that early in 1962. And I don't know if there's, look, I don't want to do any spoilers here. Amy Connect and I have talked a little bit about this, but I don't know if anybody's been watching the Lord of the Rings series. I certainly have. I've also been watching House of Dragons. And I'm loving both of them. Although I'll should say a little bit more about the Lord of the Rings series and kind of at the end, kind of toward the end of the show. I tried to get my entire family kind of in on the game, but not so much. And I'll talk to you a little bit about why. So anyways, for more PA Progressive Talk, you can tune into the Rick Smith Show's live stream at 9 p.m. Eastern on his YouTube channel, Twitter, Facebook, and subscribe to his podcast wherever you get your podcast. Go to thericksmithshow.com for the latest across all his platforms. And you got to check out Sisters of the Night Caucus podcast, right? It should be flooding your streams right now, especially ahead of the midterms. You can find it on Anchor, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. The amazing PA women stirring the political cauldron behind this podcast rock the house, and they know where the bodies are buried. Make sure to follow them on Twitter at The Night Caucus. That's at The Night Caucus on Twitter. And for all you gamers out there, the Game Inn, that's with two N's. The Game Inn is a Quakertown-based black family-owned gaming store. They're friends of the show. They've got everything from retro N64s, the latest consoles, video games for all platforms, loads of collectibles, action figures, Funko Pops. You've heard me. Walls of Funko Pops. And kids get discounts for every A in the report card now that school's back in session. Check them out on their Facebook page and follow them on Twitter at The Game Inn. That's with two N's. Got a question about a game, look for something hard to get, shoot them a message or drop them an email at thegameinpa@gmail.com. And a special shout out goes, as always, to Jonathan Mann, who wrote our intro song, There Are No People in the Future. You can check out all his great stuff on his YouTube page and follow him on Twitter at SongAdayMan. That's with two N's. That's at SongAdayMan on Twitter. Look, everybody, we want a progressive future. We need progressive media. Support Pull No Punches, homegrown progressive media today. Become a patron of Raging Chicken for as little as $5 a month. Just go to patreon.com/rcpress. We're here for the fight, but we need you. Become a patron for the price of a good beer once a month. Help keep the media in the movement in the media. Become a patron for as little as $5 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/rcpress today. Well, welcome, everybody. Welcome to our live listeners. Welcome to our podcast listeners. Special shout out goes to all our awesome Twitter warriors who are always getting news out about the show, helping share our work. One thing I didn't say in the lead up for today's show, this was just pretty cool. I was pretty psyched about this. I just had an article published in the Bucks County Beacon about True North Research's new report on the dark money behind, basically funding all the racist hysteria and anti-masking nonsense and book banning stuff in our schools. And it was fun to write. I was glad to be able to do this. Shout out goes to Cyril for kind of wanting to do that with me. If you recall, on Monday, I interviewed Alyssa Bowen on the show as part of Out the Coop Live. And Alyssa Bowen, she's been on the show a few times before, and she's a senior researcher and managing editor at True North Research, which is this kind of progressive watchdog group based out of Wisconsin. And she was on the show to talk about that report. She had also written an article for Truth Out, basically about that report and about some of its major findings. And, I really do think it's this, True North Research does this kind of indispensable work that is so critical as kind of tools for struggle. Basically, they track the money, they track the political influences and the power influences of this dark money groups. So Lisa Graves, who's the kind of like who started True North Research, she was also instrumental in the Alex Exposed work back from 2010, 2011, and 2012 that exposed the American Legislative Exchange Council. And that work that they did then, the Alex Exposed folks, was basically one of the motivating factors that had us launch Raging Chicken back in 2011. So to see that they're still doing this kind of work in this kind of targeted form, especially with that, the focus on dark money, is just so critical. So anyways, I had that piece published in the Bucks County Beacon. So please check it out if you want. And do check out our show from Monday with my interview with Alyssa Bowen. It's always great talking to her. She's just tremendous, and I love the work that she does, and it's great to be able to kind of have her on the show. So yeah, I was just thinking, I'll just kind of grab that. I'm also just kind of drop that link in today's show notes just so that you've got it here. I got to say too as well, at the Bucks County Beacon, I also didn't mention this. I don't know what's going on with me these days, but I also didn't mention this, but Bucks County Beacon also, Cyril Michaleko published a piece just yesterday, I believe, that highlighted the work of this group called PARU, which is the Panther Anti-Racist Union at Central York High School. And they were the two kind of like teacher, I don't know what you call them, like not sponsors, but they were the advisors to that student group, the Panther Anti-Racist Union, which pushed back against the book banning attempts at Central York schools and won. Right, this got some kind of national attention and so on. We've talked about them on the show before. It was great to see that Cyril landed an interview with those two teachers and talk about the work and how they did it. And do check out that article too as well, because it's gets into a little bit of the how-to. What did they do to kind of push back against these book bans? So do check that out as well. Anyways, so. There is this great report that has come out in the New York Times, as I kind of mentioned at the top of the show, from David Leonhardt, and it's a long form piece, right? So it's not like a quick read, but it gets into kind of an analysis of kind of what we're looking at, and he basically starts off this piece by saying, look. There's been trouble in this country before, right? He talks about how, like, we saw in World War II and the Cold War, right? There were threats from kind of global, kind of authoritarian kind of movements, right? There were kind of concerns about the collapse of our society. There were major challenges and so on. The 60s and 70s, obviously, there were assassinations, right? I mean, Dr. Martin Luther King, you got Malcolm X, we could go on down the list, but you also got Bobby Kennedy, right? You also got kind of Robert Kennedy, or that is the same one, sorry, JFK. Right, and you've got these assassinations. So that's crisis territory right there. And what he says here, and I'll just quote this one part, says, these earlier periods were each more alarming in some ways than anything that has happened in the United States recently. Yet during each one of those previous times of tumult, the basic dynamics of American democracy held firm. Candidates who won the most important votes were able to take power and attempt to address the country's problems. This is important. Right. And then here, this is the move he makes, right? The current period is different. As a result, the United States today finds itself in a situation with little historical precedent. American democracy is facing two distinct threats, which together represent the most serious challenge to the country's governing ideals in decades. The first threat is acute, a growing movement inside one of the country's two major political parties, obviously the Republican Party, to refuse to accept defeat in an election. The violent January 6th, 2021 attack on Congress, meant to prevent the certification of President Biden's election, was the clearest manifestation of this movement, but it has continued since then. Hundreds of elected Republican officials around the country falsely claim that the 2020 election was rigged. Some of them are running for statewide offices that would oversee future elections, potentially putting them in positions to overturn an election in 2024 or beyond. Quote, there is the possibility for the first time in American history that a legitimately elected president will not be able to take office, unquote, said Yasha Monk, a political scientist at Johns Hopkins University who studies democracy. The second threat to democracy is chronic, but also growing. The power to set government policy is becoming increasingly disconnected from public opinion. The run of recent Supreme Court decisions, both sweeping and, according to the polls, unpopular, highlight this disconnect. Although the Democratic Party has won the popular vote in 7 of the past 8 presidential elections, a Supreme Court dominated by Republican appointees seems poised to shape American politics for years, if not decades. And the court is only one of the means through which policy outcomes are becoming less closely tied to the popular will. 2 of the past 4 presidents have taken office despite losing the popular vote. Senators representing a majority of Americans are unable to pass bills, partly because of the increasing use of the filibuster. And even the House, intended as the branch of government that is most reflective of popular will, does not always do so because of the way that districts are drawn. Right? And then he goes in and he talks about this book, which actually Amy Connect has talked about before, right? This and I've actually, I believe that it's one of the books she talked about before. It's called How Democracies Die. Right, and talks about this book and this guy Stephen Levitsky with Daniel Ziblatt basically says, quote, we are far and away the most counter-majoritarian democracy in the world. Right, and then the rest of the article goes into a bunch of this. I'm obviously not going to read the whole thing because it's kind of extensive, but I wanted to kind of like set the table for you a little bit there and encourage you to check it out, because I think this is some of the background or kind of deep reading and kind of analysis I think we need as both clarifying, right, and a kind of supportive in some ways, right, and kind of having that sense of, well, let me take a step back and say why I really wanted to highlight this too, because as we get closer and closer to the elections, the midterm elections, there is an unavoidable tendency, right, for time to compress, right? And what I mean by that is that, you get focused on the outcome of this particular election because the stakes are so high, right? So, here in the PA 1st Congressional District, right, that Ashley Ehas, right, running against Brian Fitzpatrick, right? Brian Fitzpatrick is a Republican machine who votes, for kind of extremist policies, like again and again and again, while maintaining this mantle of kind of moderation, right? And her campaign is doing extraordinarily well. There's been publishing of some polls that show her actually ahead in the race. I'll be the first to admit that I'm a little bit skeptical of that, but there has been some polls, even if there have been a bit of outliers that are showing that she's actually has she has gained quite a bit of ground as in ahead in some polls in some cases. But so there's a lot at stake there, right? There's a lot at stake at the state level, especially with the overturning of Roe v. Wade. So like in the like in my district, 143rd, that's a state district. Gwendolyn Stoltz is running, right? So getting her elected in this district is absolutely critical as flipping one seat from red to blue, right, in the state legislature. In the 145th district, right, Jim Miller is running there, looking to take that seat away from Craig Stats, right, the Republican who's kind of voted right along with the extremists in the majority, right? So there's a necessary focus of getting folks elected kind of on that time. And because so much of the attention gets, and coverage, media coverage, and so on, things like this, it gets kind of compressed in the time. It can feel as if all of these issues are about the election. I'm not saying this very well, but what I mean is that what this article does, this New York Times article does, it kind of reminds us, right? It says that, gives us this acute and chronic problems. It says, we have to be in this for the long haul. That there is not an easy electoral fix to the problems of our democracy. So there's like these two layers that were always good. This is not new. I understand that, but it's been on my mind a lot. And I think this kind of analysis is perfect, that there's the two layers that we have to actually compete, right, at the electoral level, right? We got to get people to win 100%. There's no doubt about it. We got to basically take back some of the authority and power at the state level, and at the national level, right? I've been especially kind of concerned and focused on the state level because everything that with the overturning of Roe v. Wade and with upcoming Supreme Court decisions, I am sure, the battles are all going to turn to the states. Right. And you've heard not this past Monday when I talked to Alyssa Bowen, but when she was on the previous time, when she was looking at these dark money kind of moms groups funding behind kind of, attacks against Supreme Court justices and so on, that the states are increasingly going to be where these battles are going to be fought. Right. And so that requires us really to kind of dig in at the state level, which, of course, is where Democrats historically, right, have not really paid a whole lot of attention. Now, that has changed dramatically, I think, over the past, since the Trump election. And I think that's even ramped up even further given the Roe v. Wade, the overturning of Roe v. Wade. We're seeing consistent kind of data that's coming out that women are registering to vote at a much larger level than men. This is like new registrations. It seems like that, for the Democrats kind of avoiding the issue of abortion for all these years has not been in the party's best interest. It certainly has not been in women's best interest or in progressives' best interest or kind of, people who give a shit about equality's best interest, to try to avoid it or try to talk around it. But that's, that's a key thing. That's a key thing. So we're going to be fighting it at the state level. So we shall see. So this piece is, I felt in some ways it was a bit grounding. Grounding. Yeah. It was a bit grounding in the sense of saying like, okay, the Republicans and the right wing have been working at this for years, and now they've got kind of institutional minority rule. What you think about the Supreme Court decisions, as Leonhardt basically kind of refers to here, is that if Democrats have won like the popular vote, right, in 7 of the last 8 elections, right, and yet 7 of the last presidential elections, right, 7 of the last 8 presidents have not been Democrats, that's a problem. But then when you kind of face with that, you've got, say, from George W. Bush, and then you've got Donald Trump, obviously, who then were elected by a minority, who then went on to approve Supreme Court justices that are now in the majority. right? In the kind of, basically the overwhelming majority of 63, kind of leading in that direction, in the right wing direction. Those are justices that represent a minority of Americans, right? If you add that other layer, which you're talking about here, where the Senate, right, increasingly is way out of whack with any kind of proportional representation, right? As rural states lose even more population, and kind of more urban states or mixed states kind of grow in population, right? More of the people are represented by kind of fewer and fewer senators, right? They have a disproportionate vote. Then on top of that, we've talked about this on the show before, for kind of way back in the day in 2010, you had the Republicans' red map strategy, which was basically to work at the state level when Democrats were not paying any attention to what was happening at the state level. And during the Obama administration, right, Democrats lost like historic numbers of governorships and state legislatures across the country, in part because the Obama people were focused solely on national politics, right? And the again, the party follows the leader. And so no organization was done at the state levels, no kind of money was going at the state levels, but the Republicans were doing the reverse. Why? Because they knew that in 2010 there was going to be a new census and they were going to have the opportunity to do redistricting. And they did with like abandon, right? And so, now you've got, Wisconsin's the easy case to look at, where you see that, Democrats could, in statewide elections, Democrats could be getting upward close to 60% of the vote, right? But being outnumbered in the state legislature, right? By, like 58% Republicans, right? The idea being that is like they've redistricted everything so much that more Republicans could win elections, even though those Republicans represent fewer of the people in the state, right? And that they have, practically, almost veto-proof majorities in many states. So those things kind of going on. So that means that we've got a serious crisis of in American democracy. And I like what they say there, right? The Stephen Levitsky says, right? Say we are far and away the most counter-majoritarian democracy in the world. It takes a lot, I think, in our country, right, to get past that American exceptionalism to really grapple with that fact that we are a democracy at this point in name only, right? This is not a people-ruled place, right? That these structures have been manipulated in such a way that a minority of people are controlling, increasingly have control and can set policy against our wishes. So, good morning, Emily. How are you this morning? Yes, we got started a little bit earlier today. So do check that out. Links are in today's show notes. It's a great piece, and kind of important reading, I think. Now, the other thing I really wanted to just kind of chat about, right, is this this Trump rally that took place last weekend. I mean, I don't know if people saw this, but it was freaking off the wall, right? So it was held in Youngstown, Ohio, and I didn't know. This is just a whole different level of disturbing, right? Because look, what we expect by now, we know if Trump is going to have a rally, he's going to be racist, right? He's going to basically say they stole the election and that I'm the legitimate guy. We know all that kind of stuff. But, we're finding out, we get a little preview of the kind of, campaign Trump is running. And really, this is a cultural campaign at this point. It's one that is attempting to keep that, keep the fuel into the, simmering violence, make sure that fuel is stoked, right? That's really what's going on now. In part because there's more and more pressure from all these, legal challenges he has. He's losing in the courts left and right. He's you know, facing charges now of fraud and tax evasion and obstruction of justice in New York State. Facing him and his team are facing all sorts of legal challenges in Georgia over kind of interference with the election, all sorts of stuff like that. So, you know, whether or not he runs for president for me is a secondary issue at this point. Basically, what he's doing, he's training the brown shirts, right? That's what's happening right now. And so these rallies are, you know, they go right up to that edge of overtly calling for violence, right? They go right up to that edge, just as he's so skilled at doing, of telling people that, you know, if he's arrested, right, or something like this, that they should basically burn shit down. Or if certain people aren't elected, right, that they should not accept the legitimacy of the election. So we expect all of that, right? This, however, goes to show you what happened in Youngstown at the end of this takes it to a whole new level. So if you watch the videos, and I'm linking to a story in New York Magazine, the NY Mag, where you can follow the links to the videos and stuff like that, where you can see it. But there's this weird moment. Let me just see if this will hold on. All right, that does play. So let me just, here's just a short piece. This is from the, I'm going to talk a little bit over it just because you obviously you're not going to see it, and I don't have the setup for you to see it. But this is from a tweet from Aaron Rupar, who was documenting some of this stuff. But so this is kind of at the end of this movement, and now this was broadcast live on Newsmax, right? So that's where the feed was coming. But just check this out. So Trump is stepping up to the thing. You hear all the cheering.
It was hardworking patriots like you who built this country, and it is hardworking patriots like you who are going to save our country. We will stand up to the radical left lunatics.
Okay, right at this point, the camera has cut the radical left lunatics is what he's saying, right? Right at this point, right after he starts the radical left lunatics, they cut to the crowd, and the crowd has their arms up, like, you know, like you would imagine, like a Heil Hitler suit, except salute, but instead of it Heil Hitler, or instead of like the hands up, like praise God kind of thing, they have one finger held up pointing toward him, right? And they're all pointing towards him. Right, so here's what he's saying.
Like you who are going to save our country.
Right now,
we will stand up to the radical left lunatics and rhinos, and we will fight for America like no one has ever fought before. There is no mountain we cannot climb. There is no summit we cannot reach. There is no challenge we cannot meet. There is no victory we cannot have. We will not bend. We will not break. We will not yield. We will never give in. We will never give up. We will never, ever, ever, ever back down. As long as we are confident and united, the tyrants we are fighting do not stand even a small chance of victory. Because we are Americans, and Americans kneel to God and to God alone.
And it goes on. And now this point, there's a wider shot of the crowd at this point, and they all have that single finger pointed up, pointing forward, right? Really, really freaky. Now, the other thing about that, why it's freaky, is because you hear that music in the background. That was not music that was added to the video afterwards. That was part of the music that was playing over the loudspeakers as Trump was doing this. It was kind of set as this kind of, you know, everybody ever seen the Independence Day, you know, where the aliens come down and whatever, Bill Pullman or whatever his name is stands up at the end. It's like, this is our Independence Day. It's crafted in that way with a similar kinds of music, except the music that was playing, and this was pointed out by the New York Times last Sunday, was nearly identical from a track called WWG1WGA. Right, that's the abbreviation for Where We Go One, where we go all. That is the QAnon slogan. And that song was called Mirrors, right? But it was a QAnon song, And Trump is using that song in some of the videos that he has produced, right? And he's also using it, and he played it also according to the New York Magazine. He also played the same song at recent Pennsylvania rallies, right? So now Trump's people are saying, oh, it was just a royalty-free song that we just happened to find, right? Yeah, it's not, it's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy. So this is how the NY Mag covers this. It says, quote, meanwhile, the finger-pointing gesture that spontaneously broke out among the crowd on Saturday night seemed to have professional Trump rally watchers and extremism analysts stumped, at least for now. The Times reported that, quote, scores of people in the crowd raised fingers in the air in an apparent reference to the one in what they thought was in the song's title, where we go one, we go all. And it was the first time in memory of some Trump aides that such a display had occurred at one of his rallies. No one else had seen it before either, so there was a lot of head scratching afterwards. It could have been a QAnon thing or some kind of America First thing, or another demonstration of the ascent Christian nationalism in the MAGA-era GOP. Right? So take your pick. QAnon, America Firsters, or Christian nationalists. Right? That seems to be what was kind of going on. And it's really eerie. And why I said, this is one of the most concerning ones once, because, if you do any reading at all in the history of authoritarianism and fascism and stuff, this gradual melding of kind of extremist and fundamentalist religion with this kind of cult of personality is the setup for even further devolution into fascism. I'm reading this book right now called Strongmen, which is like from Mussolini to Trump, and looking at these patterns that happens in the descent into authoritarianism. And this is right on track with this. All right, so that's to be kind of majorly concerned. So check out that piece too as well. And that's so freaking eerie, I swear to God. Where is this other piece I wanted to talk about too? Okay. Third thing in the first segment here today. I don't know how many people saw this, because there's so much going on, right, that it's hard to pay attention to everything, right? But I am very happy that this basically made it into my crosshairs as I was kind of, doing reading for the week and stuff. This was about a congressional hearing with kind of big oil, and what kind of came out in some of that hearing. And this is all the more important ahead of the UN summit. This past week also, the United Nations summit, yearly, whatever, annually summit is a kind of getting together where everyone gives their speeches. We had new reports that are coming out. We talked about this in the show last week, that it looks like that we're facing tipping points in the climate sooner rather than later. Things are moving more quickly than expected. And all the while throughout this process, we've seen, big oil, Exxon, Chevron, all BP, basically, making the claims that they're turning green. Right. If you fill up your gas, you fill up your car, right? Because for those the vast majority of us who do not have fully electric cars at this point, right, you got to go to the gas pump, right? And you're gonna, you're seeing like right on the gas pump is, I filled up a Giant the other day because I got like 40 cents off gas because of grocery stuff, right? So I go and I fill up there, and there's a big thing. Look, Giant has planted X number of millions of trees, right? We're committed to kind of protecting the environment. And I'm sitting there practically gagging on the gas fumes, being like, Jesus Christ, this is so freaking gaslighting, right? I'm being asked to, and it's like nice color green and all this stuff. You see the trees, all that stuff. The same is true when you go to, it's not just Giant, right? You see this on all these gas pumps, and they're promoting this green kind of aesthetic. So this is from Oliver Millman in the writing for The Guardian. And I'm just going to read a little bit of this to give you a quick taste of it. So criticism in the U.S. of the oil industry's obfuscation over the climate crisis is intensifying after internal documents showed companies attempted to distance themselves from agreed climate goals, admitted, quote, gaslighting, unquote, the public for purported efforts to go green, and even wished critical activists to be invested by bedbugs. The communications were unveiled as part of a congressional hearing held in Washington, D.C., where an investigation into the role of fossil fuels in driving the climate crisis produced documents obtained from the oil giants ExxonMobil, Chevron, Shell, and BP. Quote, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they wish bedbugs on you, then you win, unquote, said Varshina Prakash, executive director of the Sunrise Movement. The organization accused Shell of a, quote, legacy of violence and ignoring the well-being of communities across the globe, unquote. The revelations are part of the third hearing held by the House Committee on Oversight and Reform on how the fossil fuel industry sought to hamper the efforts to address the climate crisis. Democrats who lead the committee called top executives from the oil companies to testify last year, in which they denied they had misled the public. The new documents are, quote, the latest evidence that oil giants keep lying about their commitments to help solve the climate crisis and should never be trusted by policymakers, unquote, said Richard Wiles, president of the Center for Climate Integrity. Quote, if there's one thing consistent about the oil and gas majors' positions on the climate, it's their utter inability to tell the truth, unquote, Wiles added. Ro Khanna, co-chairman of the committee, said the new documents are, quote, explosive and show a, quote, culture of intense disrespect, unquote, to climate activists. The oil giants' quote, climate pledges rely on unproven technology, accounting gimmicks, and misleading language to hide the reality, quote, he added. Quote, big oil executives are laughing at the people trying to protect our planet while they knowingly work to destroy it, unquote. Right? This is all happening while, quote, Exxon which recently announced profits of $17.9 billion for the first 3 months, for the 3 months until June. That is more than 3 times what it earned in the same quarter a year ago, has publicly said it is committed to the Paris Climate Agreement to curb global heating. However, the documents released by the Democratic-led House Committee include an August 2019 memo by an executive to Darren Woods, Exxon's chief executive, on the need to, quote, remove reference to the Paris Agreement, unquote, from an announcement by an industry lobby group that Exxon is a member of. Such a statement, quote, could create a potential commitment to advocate on the Paris Agreement goals, unquote, the executive warned. A separate note on a 2018 Exxon presentation also admitted that biofuels derived from algae was still, quote, decades away from the scale we need, unquote, despite the company long promoting it as a way to lower emissions, right? And this goes on and on. A Shell tweet posted in 2020 asking others what they would do to reduce emissions resulted in a torrent of ridicule from Twitter users. A communications executive for the company wrote privately that criticism that the tweet was, quote, gaslighting the public was not totally without merit. That's what they said. So let me read that again. A communications executive for the company, this is Shell, wrote privately that criticism that the tweet was gaslighting the public was, quote, not totally without merit. And the tweet was pretty tone deaf, he added. We are, after all, in a tweet like this, implying others need to sacrifice without focusing on ourselves, right? They knew exactly what they were doing. So this, it goes on. So this is one of the things, because we are in such a moment of crisis, right? This is the kind of stuff that can fall through the cracks, like seeing what's happening here, right? When we get so compressed around election times, it's hard to see this stuff, right? Which is one of the reasons I wanted to talk about it today. But it's also one of the things, and I don't want to get off on a sidetrack here, so I'm just going to comment on this, and I'm going to take a little of a break. But the nonstop coverage of what's happening at Mar-a-Lago and with the documents and Trump lawsuits on cable TV, right, and to a certain degree on online too as well, and into the print media, but the print media to a lesser degree. But that nonstop focus, right, is just like, especially at a place like MSNBC, right, it's just like you're missing all of this stuff, right? If anything, right, this should be like top line story. So anyways, do check that out. All right, so I'm going to take a quick break here, and we're going to come back. We're going to talk a little about kind of Banned Books Week, what's happening here in Bucks County, a couple space things, and then maybe a little Lord of the Rings at the end. I don't know. We'll see a little bit. So pretty cool. Anyways, this is Kevin Mahoney, creator and founder of Raging Chicken. Looking forward to some cooler weather. It's actually cold this morning. I don't know if people were out there today, but I was out. I was like, whoa, I'm definitely underdressed as I'm walking my dog. But anyways, weekend is here. Got the Banned Books Parade. We're going to talk about kind of in a second. But for the meantime, look, if you like progressive media, right, help us out, right? The way that we keep things going, the way that we kind of further expand stuff, the way that we, reach out and making sure that more people get to have their voices heard. We do what we can to kind of amplify what's happening out, building connections with other local media. The way that we keep the lights on, so to speak, right, are for kind of from our patrons. And you can help support this show by becoming a patron for as little as $5 a month. I mean, literally, that's like going to Starbucks and getting a coffee or having a good beer at your kind of local brewery. $5 a month helps keep things going here, helps expand the work that we're doing. It helps keep on bringing in the great guests that we get on Out to Coop Live too as well. All right, we're going to be back just in a quick moment. But until then, this is Kevin Mahoney. See you on the flip side after this quick break. Hey, everybody, it's Kevin Mahoney, creator and founder of Raging Chicken, back with you here in this Friday Politics Roundup. It is Banned Books Week this week. It's coming to a close this week. But like public libraries across, Pennsylvania and the country have been, building out their Banned Books Week table and banned book selling. And I think in part because of Banned Books Week is always a good time in booksellers' lives, right? Because they have their banned books, tables put out there, and they have promotions around it, and they build connections with what's happening in the libraries and things like this. And libraries have their banned books areas and make it all available to shine a light on this persistent tendency for censorship and so on. And in Bucks County, we've been fighting this left and right. I mean, as I said in the opening here, we had this, just this, past week, we find out that in Central Bucks School District, this woman, Vanna De Armand, complained to the school board meeting that, there's on Canvas, right? Canvas is like this kind of online platform where kids, are logging in to their for school and where all their materials are and all this other kinds of stuff. It is a content management program, which I freaking whatever. But anyway, so Canvas is one of them. There's other ones at different schools and stuff, but on Canvas, one of the resources that was listed on there was for this organization called DocuSeek. Right. And DocuSeek is, kind of gives access, people buy packages or districts buy packages of different companies to give them access to different things. Right. And DocuSeek, right, was one of the resources that was on their page. So just to give you a sense of what DocuSeek is, like DocuSeek basically, and I'm just reading right now from their website, right? So this is no editorializing here. I'm just going to read their on their about page. This is what it says. DocuSeek streams essential independent social issue and environmental film to colleges, universities, and K-12 schools, providing exclusive access to content from renowned leaders in documentary film distribution. Free previews are available to registered users. Streaming licenses are available for single titles in the entire collection for periods ranging from a week to the life on file. Right, and it gives you, here's here, and then it gives you a sense of some of the participating distributors. Right, there's Bullfrog Films, there's Clarity Films, Collective Eye Films, Degenerate Films, Distrib Films, and a whole bunch of them. Right, so you can read them all. They tell you what their focuses are, and basically Icarus Films is like, they produce some great stuff. And it's, a way that basically you provide a central access point for a whole series of documentaries. Right. And that's what it is. So, that's what libraries do, right? I mean, libraries, so instead of you having to go out and try to find them on yourselves or pay for Netflix or find it on some kind of alternate kind of streaming site, you get to kind of go here through the library in order to get them, right? And, the collections they range, right? From, a whole range of different kinds of issues, from the 20th century to adoption, to ecology, to Keynesian economics, to labor economics, to Lebanon, to environmental education, to Serbia, but when somebody probably saw one of the subjects was, you might sit down for this one, right? Sex work sector, right? I'm sure they saw something like that and they're like, aha, right? Or they saw Marxism and communism or Marxist economics, right? They saw those as a potential topic. Or they kind of said like, oh my God, what are we going to do? Maybe there's something, oh my God, there's a section on Christianity, and that is right above citizenship, social movements, and activism. Oh my God, it's a hotbed of propaganda. Look, they have a whole section on women's history and women's studies. We can't have our kids having access to that, right? God forbid they get access to those documentaries on dance or democracy, right? So it gives you an idea about here. Now, again, documentary films, right? They cover the huge gamut. And DocuSeek provides access to a range of just awesome, awesome films, right? And again, I would probably say, right, without kind of going through everything that's here, that sure, there may be a chance that there's a film on there that, people are going to feel a little bit uncomfortable with about kids having direct access with. But the fact is that, if you're getting something for K through 12, right, just like any organization, you can set filters for the organization and so on, right? So it is not something that like kids are just going to have access to porn, right? And, news alert, parents at home, your kids, right, if they have access to the internet, right, they're not getting their porn from school. They're getting it right in your house, in their room. Right? So, whatever. So, whatever. But so that's what they're, that's what they're going after, this thing on DocuSeek. And so they went ahead and they banned it. We found out that they banned it because this woman, this is exactly what we were talking about on the show on Monday, right? Why I had Alyssa Bowen on the show this week to talk about their report about the dark money behind this stuff is because this is their playbook. We're seeing it play out right in front of our faces, right? A parent comes up and says, I am a concerned parent, right? And I'm not doubting that she's not a concerned parent, but the talking points, the directing it towards here, everything that happened behind the scenes to get her to get up and say that stuff. And now I'm not saying that she was part of some kind of a cabal, right? Although she may be, but I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that there's a funnel of information that is designed to, there's a bunch of information and media and organizations that are designed to funnel people towards particular conclusions for particular actions. And the right wing does it extraordinarily well, especially the Christian nationalist right. Right? Because what they play upon, as we talked about on Monday with Alyssa Bowen, like they said, they play on this parental rights discourse. Right? Where they go, I am just a concerned parent. And if you don't know that millions and millions of dollars are being spent to create organizations and discourses and to get parents to get so concerned that they're freaking out, right? Or just to basically wanted to do their good Christian duty and go up and kind of, block the kind of, Sodom and Gomorrah comment or content on their local library thing, right? Whatever it is, right? There's an infrastructure designed to push those parents towards those school boards to do exactly that. And certainly we know that the local Republican parties, right here, the Penridge kind of Republicans, right? We see this, all around the place. They are encouraging this. They're strategizing to do things like this. Now, is Vanna de Armand, is she part of that Republican Party? I just don't know. That may be the case. I'm sure that some of the people who are listening right now know who she is. They know are familiar with her. They know who she's connected to. But she's pretty clearly to me, based upon the reporting in the Courier Times, pretty clear to me that she's tapped into the religious right somehow, whether it's her church, right? Whether it's her local Republican Party, right? Whether it's her, I don't know, her healthy God practices. I'm just making that up. I don't know if she says that or not, but she's bringing that stuff forward. And if you don't know about all that stuff, all that background, all the thing that went in there, it's hard to get to say, okay, well, she's a concerned parent. She's just worried about her kid, right? And it's her practices. And like, well, look, we've said this 1,000 times. There was already practices on the books for kind of the concerned parents, right? If they were concerned about their kid having access to particular things, there was already a process in place at Penridge, at Central Bucks, and all that kind of stuff. All this new stuff is not because these libraries or librarians or schools are suddenly flooded with like left-wing propaganda. No, it's because the Republican Party and the far right in this country, the billionaires that support that infrastructure, know that this is the way that you fuel their base, getting them riled up so that they can win the elections in the fall and ultimately privatize public schools. That's what this is all about. And there's an interesting case happening right now, which it may not seem related right away, but I asked Alyssa about this on Monday, and I'm going to, this is something I want to dig into locally here too as well. If you look at, a bunch of school districts in the area, the teachers, their union contract is up right now and they're in negotiations. I'm in negotiations at Kutztown. I mean, not me personally, but my union is in negotiations at Kutztown, right? Or the state system of higher education, right? Right now, Palisades School District, for example, they are without they are in negotiations, right? They still don't have a contract. There was a recent school board meeting where a bunch of the teachers showed up, right? Kind of in unison, same t-shirts and everything like this, and supportive of wanting a fair contract, right? Haven't seen a lot of reporting about this in the news and so on. But it's gonna be interesting how that plays out. Frankly, my understanding is that Central Bucks School District is going to be going into contract negotiations this year. And my sense of things is that's where we're going to see it explode. That's where we're going to see the direct attack on teachers' unions, right? We're going to see the direct attack on teachers, right? Because guess what, folks? Those are the same things, right? So keep an eye on what's happening at Palisades, right? And there may be a time when we're going to see like a call for support, right? And I hope that folks are going to step up behind the Palisades teachers, right? And demand that we've got their backs, because look, for folks who are not familiar with union contracts, right? Especially teachers union contracts in this instance right now. One of the most important parts of a teacher's union contract is their defense of academic freedom and professionalism and expertise. What does that mean? It's true that things like medical benefits and salaries, right, and leave time, all that kind of stuff, that's what gets the headlines, right? Because those are the economic things, right? The paychecks, what you get for your salary, what you get for your fringe benefits, that kind of stuff. Those are called mandatory areas of bargaining, right? So they're always going to be the last things that are settled, right? And they're so they always seem like that's really what the sticking point is. And that works great for kind of like right-wing school districts and for this, because then when there's a potential strike, they can say, well, the holdup is over salary or medical benefits or leave or something like this. And so it feeds into this kind of greedy teacher narrative, right? That, you know, that this country seems so kind of like keen on perpetuating, right? Especially in our traditional media. But when you start looking at, and that's been changing a little bit too as well, because the pressure has been so much on teachers, and now we're in a teachers crisis, right? Because so many teachers have left and they're not coming back and they're not going into teaching, right? Because they see the writing on the wall, they see what this is like, and they're not sure they want to stick around. But the other parts of the contract, which are so critical to the day-to-day education of our kids, have to do with who is in control of making decisions over the educational quality and the curriculum that's in the schools. And teachers, if you ask me, I mean, obviously I'm in education, but whatever, I'm saying people who studied to be teachers and studied for education and studied in order to do this stuff, and then are working with our kids on a daily basis and know our communities the most, those are the ones who are closest to the ground, closest to the families and the kids, right? And also the experts in teaching, right? And curriculum, right? They do professional development and all this other kinds of stuff. So you want the teachers, the people who have most impact on our kids, that have the most expertise and are in the best position to make quality educational decisions. You want them to have control over the curriculum, right? You want them to be in the driver's seat, so to speak, right? And part of what that means is that, you know, our public money goes to support these structures in which they're in, right? It's all that kind of stuff. Instead, right, you see on the right, right, they want to break those unions, right? So they're going to put the control into the hands of school boards and administrators, and probably outside contractors that will profit off of selling curricular materials to the school districts. That's the game, right? And that's why, you know, what we saw in that kind of report from True North Research about, you know, some of the longstanding anti-public education folks were funneling money into all this kind of anti-CRT stuff, into all the book banning materials and all that, because that's their long-term game. And those folks are directly connected to and closely aligned with the Christian right. Right, because as Betsy DeVos, you know, former Trump Secretary of Education, and longtime anti-public school advocate, she's publicly advocated for years, right? She and her husband and their whole kind of, you know, network of nonprofit, quote unquote, nonprofit advocacy organizations that she runs, or funds at least. They basically they're not opposed to public money, right? This is what my good friend Rick Smith always says. They're never opposed to public money. They're just opposed to that public money going to public schools. They want public money to be funneled into Christian schools at the same time that they will then have complete control over the curriculum. So they don't need to teach things like evolution. They don't need to teach things like the equality of the sexes, right? And they certainly don't need to accept LGBTQ students in their schools. Right? That's the game. And so one of the pathways through that, in order to get, you know, obviously one of it is funding this kind of parental outrage stuff and these kind of grassroots organizations that are increasingly extreme to put pressure upon kind of school districts and school boards in order to ban books, in order to take control of the curriculum that way. The other way they're going to come at it, I guarantee this, you're going to see this, I would predict Central Bucks School District is going to be where we're going to see it play out locally, the attack on teachers and teachers unions, right? That's the next round. And Paul Martino, as I've mentioned before, Paul Martino, he is the one who already put that on the table last year when he said, you know, the two Democrats that got elected to the school board in Central Bucks School District, he basically said, because PSEA, the teachers union, because PSEA supported those two candidates, then they should recuse themselves from those contract negotiations, because the teachers union, that's who they're bargaining with, right? That's who's on the other side of the table of the school board. And so it wants them out of the room, right? Because they had special interest money. Meanwhile, Paul Martino, singularly Paul Martino, has basically funded the rest of the board, right? You know, so like, and he's not a special interest. He's just a concerned parent. So crazy. Anyways, there you have it. So yeah, this is going to keep on going. And all the more reason why it was good to see that, you know, tomorrow, Saturday, September 24th, we're going to see a banned books parade in Doylestown, right? That's going to be taking place from 6 to 4 p.m. at State and Main Streets. There's a link in today's show notes. Just click on Banned Books Parade. It'll take you to their Facebook event site. You can get more information on that if you happen to be in the area. If not, you know, see what's happening this weekend in your neck of the woods. This is, you know, Banned Books Week is not something that just takes place just in Pennsylvania or just in Bucks County. It happens everywhere, right? I'm sure there'd be great events that are going on. And like, look, it's a great time, right, to go out because all the books are right there, right, and on the displays. It is a great time, you know, to do a little bit of that kind of holiday shopping a little bit early, right, getting buy banned books. The other thing is also pretty cool too. I should say the Bucks County Library, Bucks County Free Library, on their website, they're also selling mugs and T-shirts, and they say I read banned books, right? Also, great birthday presents, great kind of holiday presents, right? So good time to kind of buy some of those for the fam. I read banned books. Yep. I hope my kids don't listen to this to know what they're getting for Christmas. So anyways, yeah. So I want to thank you for all the work that you've been doing already out there, because it's quite a time. And I put this on to, you know, I just saw this WFMZ 69 news story talking about how abortion is going to have an impact in Bucks County. It looks like that we're seeing similar kind of national trend. Greater numbers of women who are registering to vote for the first time are motivated to get out and vote in the midterms because of the elimination of Roe v. Wade. And some of the mainstream media are starting to pay attention to this stuff, which is great. And the other thing that's also history is also interesting is that Brian Fitzpatrick has got nothing. Like he legitimately. And now again, this is not the first time that people are complaining on it. We've had, you know, Kirsten Zolfel's been on this show saying exactly this. He doesn't meet with his constituents, right? He doesn't kind of answer any questions that he doesn't want to. He wants everything nicely controlled in PR, especially when it comes to hard issues. He doesn't want to kind of ever talk about his abortion record, which is horrific, right? He is an anti-abortionist through and through. And the fact that he, you know, the only thing, he'll issue statements that are well crafted by his PR firms, but he won't answer the hard questions even from reporters for a story on abortion in Bucks County in this election. So Ashley Ehas was out there kind of talking about his record, which is freaking awesome to see. And the reporter, and this is what I'm so glad that they did, the reporter said, look, we tried several times to reach out to the campaign and they didn't even respond. They didn't say that they didn't want to respond. They just didn't respond. Right? It wasn't even a no comment. It was just like, nope, not going to call you back. Right? So there you have it. There you have it. It's going to be a critical campaign. So quick, my mouth just goes nuts. Better have some coffee. A couple cool things in space news. As I said, we're going to find out later today the status of the Artemis One mission. That's the first mission that's going to the moon. This is an unmanned mission. It's basically a test run for the Artemis 2, which will basically be a manned mission around the moon. I don't believe that Artemis 2 is that they're actually going to the surface, if I remember correctly. They might send probes or something there. Artemis 3, the third version of that, will actually be where they'll actually bring people down to the moon. So this is the first one that is, this is the first thing that's out there. Okay, sorry. I just kept on getting these notifications. I'm like, what's going on? I always worry because there's been times when the stream cuts out or something like this and I'm unaware of it. It's not showing up on my screens and then people care. So like people sometimes start texting me and stuff. So I wanted to make sure that that wasn't the case. Sorry, my bad. That's totally an aside. Anyways, so the Artemis 3, I think, is when they're going down. So they were supposed to launch the mission in August, late August, a Labor Day, I want to say, but there was some kind of a sealant leak that was kind of off-gassing some stuff, and they said it was beyond any kind of particular specs, so that there's a potential of catastrophic things. It could explode, right? If it catches on fire, hydrogen is one of the main fuel, and it's extraordinarily flammable. So they said, well, we probably don't want to do that. Then they tried to do it again. They thought they fixed. No, they had actually had to take it down off the launch pad, and they have to go fix it. They brought it back to the launch pad, and this week they did kind of like a fueling test, and everything seems to be holding. They had a different way of doing things where it's going to take a little bit longer to fuel things up, but it's going to make sure that it doesn't put unnecessary pressure upon these seals when it's on the pad. And we're going to find out today. And so the next launch window opens on Tuesday, which is the 27th. And so we might see that mission kind of go forward anytime after that. I think if I remember correctly, let me just actually take a look real quick. So the launch window is, let me think. Let me see here. Yes, it just says that's targeted for no earlier than September 27th, but it doesn't give us what the closing date on that, right? Because the mission's also based on the position of the moon and all this other kind of thing about when they can go and weather and so forth. So we shall see. So that'll come up. We'll find out more about that today at 12:30 p.m. If you're a space junkie like me, you can actually just head on over to nasa.com and get info on that. NASA.gov, my bad. NASA.gov/NASA Live, or just go nasa.gov and click on their the live stream, and then you can actually watch the info. Right. The other info is that the DART, right, which is they finally have the info up on it. This is great. DART, which is that kind of double asteroid redirection test where they're actually be smashing this satellite battering ram into this asteroid to see if they can actually affect the orbit of an asteroid, divert its course, in potentially ways of protecting the planet. Beginning on Monday at 5:30 p.m. you can watch a live feed from NASA's DART mission, and the live coverage begins at 6 p.m. for NASA's double asteroid redirection test. That's where it's going to impact directly in the asteroid. Oh, great! They even have the name. The asteroid is called Dimorphos, or Dimorphos, something like that. And the impact should take place around 7:14 p.m. And then it'll be a kind of discussion afterwards of that. So you can also check that out at nasa.gov, or you can watch NASA TV. But again, the direct link is nasa.gov/NASA Live for all that great info, and you can see their upcoming schedule of events. Pretty freaking cool for space nerds like me. And then as I was looking at that, I literally had no idea this was the case until I'm looking at info on DART and what the time was and stuff. And they had a little sidebar about the Jetsons premiering on this date in 1962. So awesome. All right. So I've been watching, so I'm going to say this really quick. I'm not going to say too much because Amy and I have talked about, one, we still haven't had our kind of Wheel of Time discussion. As you know, we talked about this on the show about wanting to do this, and I will say 100% this is completely my fault for not kind of moving forward on this sooner. It's just been, I got sick, right? I think I talked about this on the show. I got sick at the end of July, beginning of August, and it really kind of took me out of commission for a couple of weeks, and then there was, and then because of this stuff, I had a blood clot in my leg, right, and it seems to be all the kind of tests have come back or come back with good news, right? Have come back negative with some kind of more concerning things, and it seemed to have some related to like a kind of a pressure sock that I was using to kind of deal with an Achilles tendon injury, and that may have caused it. But if you get something like that, that's super serious. And I was having like all sorts of physical manifestations. I thought I had COVID, and it felt like COVID. I'm still not entirely well. Actually, I got a PCR test, so even the PCR test came up negative. So, but it was it was something. So, and then I had to do a whole bunch of kind of follow-up stuff, medical stuff after that. It just, that happened right at the time when I was also supposed to be prepping for my semester and getting everything done. And it just compressed all my time and really took me off my game. And anybody who listens to the show knows, because I, missed a bunch of shows and things like this. And that was really why. So, I'm really at the core of that. So the Wheel of Time, and last Amy and I were talking about this. We thought maybe, look, the new Wheel of Time series is supposed to come out in November. I want to say November 8th is sticking in my head for some reason, but it's supposed to come out in November. So maybe we try to plan that time where we're going to actually have that little discussion. We've had some discussions about opening that up to maybe patrons or come with a Zoom call or something like that, which would be just kind of fun to have that conversation. But we'll get back to that one. And then the other one, we also got talking about Lord of the Rings, right? Because the new series, Rings of Power, just started, I think, right at the beginning of September. And I've been watching that. I know Amy's been excited about that too as well. She's a huge Lord of the Rings fan, and I don't think I'm telling any secrets here when I say that. I think she's even said that on the show. But that's just kind of that's been cool. So I was really excited for the first, when they debuted, and I got my whole family to watch it with me and that kind of stuff. And it's gonna be really hard to get me to say dislike anything that's Lord of the Rings. I just love it, right? And I'll just say my first impression was that I was very excited about it, right? And I wanted to continue watching, right? I'm not going to talk too much about the show itself yet, but there's this you may have found this too as well. If you ever read Lord of the Rings, or you've even watched the movies, there's a lot of world building background, right? There's some things that are at a different pace than what you would get in kind of like any other action movies, right? Now it's got its share of action and things like this, or action series and things like this. But there's this kind of development of the world, right? That kind of slowly unfolds, which I personally love, right? Absolutely love that. It was a harder sell for for the rest. I have to say, my kids were excited about watching it and watched it and liked watching it, but we're kind of the pacing for them was a little there. So we shall see, right? I mean, I'm up to date on everything. They are not, so I'm hoping to kind of get them back in. I'm waiting for a rainy weekend, a cold rainy weekend. And I'm gonna say, hey, come on, let's watch the rest of it. So anyways, so hopefully we'll be able to work that stuff out going forward too as well. Want to do some fun stuff here too, in addition to the focus on the decline of American democracy. So put those things together. I think it's a good pairing. Anyways, all right, that's all I got for today. And hope you all are doing well. Hope you all are staying warm. It was surprised to wake up with things so cold this morning, at least in my neck of the woods, and I happen to love it. So good news for me. Just show notes, programming notes coming up on Monday's show. My kids have off on Monday, so I think we're going to take a little kind of small little excursion for a couple days. I'm not sure when we're coming back on Monday, so I did not schedule a guest for Monday. I should be on Monday night, and we're just kind of an open phones, kind of what's on your mind stuff. So got anything that's on your mind you're thinking about, shoot me a message, DM me on Twitter. That's at RC Press. That's at RC Press on Twitter. You can DM me there with kind of ideas or issues that are coming up, any events that are coming up that you want to talk about. I think we should talk about on the show on Monday. That'd be great. And then it looks like that for the following week, we'll be back on track with our next set of guests. I'll let you know who that's going to be soon. And it's interesting planning some stuff. There's so many things that are moving so quickly that there's some people that I started to reach out to, that the reason I reached out to them, I wanted to have them come on the show to talk about this thing, but this thing is already kind of dramatically change into a different direction, so it didn't going to work out, but so we'll go anyways. Wish you all a great weekend. Have a good one. Happy I guess like first, foray into fall. Yesterday was the fall equinox, and here we are into fall officially, at least for the astronomical calendar. Is that how it works? Something like that. But yeah, so remind you can help this show out by, first of all, look, subscribe to you watching us on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, right? Even if you don't watch YouTube a ton, you subscribe to our channel, helps other people find the show. If you're listening to this as a podcast, make sure you leave us that 5-star review. Just take a couple minutes, leave that 5-star review. If you want to leave a comment or something like that, it'd be fantastic. You can do that on Apple Podcasts, you can Google Podcasts, you can do that on Spotify. Spotify, you can't leave the comments yet, but you can use the excuse me, you can use the star reviews. When you review like that and you're kind of engaged with the content, what that does is that basically kind of tweaks the algorithm, let other people say, hey, you might want to check out this show. And it helps amplify not only just the work that we do, but the people in our community and the people that we bring on here, and to amplify their voices and to help contribute to this kind of a progressive media environment that we need to build if we're going to hope to maintain any kind of semblance of a kind of democratic future. So there you have it. That's my pitch. You can head on over to patreon.com/rcpress and become a patron for as little as $5 a month. Thank you to all our patrons. Thank you to our Twitter warriors who always get the word out. And thank you to our guests. And thank you for people who support us from day one. It's been quite a ride so far, I have to say. All right, everybody. This is Kevin Mahoney, creator and founder of Raging Chicken. Looking forward to a good weekend. We spent some time with my kids. Maybe enjoy some of this cooler weather. I'm loving it. Hope you will too. Take it easy, everybody. Have a good one. See ya!